Welcome to Leadership Rediscovered. I'm your host, Laura Siebold, and today I am very excited to be joined by Dr. Michael Davis. President Michael Davis of Fairmont State University formerly served as the Chief of Staff at James Madison University. In that role, Dr. Davis managed JMU's presidential priorities and directed matters of policy and institutional importance, including strategic planning, institutional research, and accreditation. His executive leadership grew from his commitment to students. Prior to that role, Dr. Davis served as a faculty member and director of debate in JMU School of Communication Studies. With debate coaching experience spanning more than 25 years, Dr. Davis leveraged alumni and external grant support to elevate JMU's Madison Debate Society to one of national renown. Dr. Davis previously taught communication studies and coached debate at Georgia State University, University of Georgia, University of Rochester, University of Louisville, Mercer University, and Syracuse University. As a first-generation undergraduate student, Dr. Davis learned early the importance of academic mentors and campus support. He strives to address the holistic needs of today's diverse students while reducing barriers. His approach to leadership is rooted in his experience in civil discourse, deliberation, and debate, experience that instilled in him the value of welcoming diverse opinions. Dr. Davis has expertise in leading curricular innovation and crafting international student and faculty opportunities. In his international programming efforts and travels abroad while at JMU, Dr. Davis conducted programming with universities and government agencies in Rwanda and Kosovo. He secured formal partnerships offering high-impact opportunities that facilitate compelling enrollment and programmatic co-curricular prospects for students and faculty alike. Dr. Davis is a proud community member. While at JMU, he cultivated productive relationships with city and county officials, administrators at neighboring institutions, business leaders, elected officials, and statewide commissions and task forces. His community relations experience expands campus boundaries for the symbiotic benefit of both campus and community. In his spare time, his community involvement includes many volunteer leadership positions. Dr. Davis is and always will be a communication studies scholar. As such, he relishes the opportunity to translate his academic experience in public discourse, sounds fascinating, to unequivocally support student success. Dr. Davis earned a Doctor of Philosophy in Communication Studies and a graduate certificate in Women's and Gender Studies from the University of Georgia. He also holds a Master of Arts and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Communication and Rhetorical Studies from Syracuse University. His academic research interests center women in the civil rights movement, debate pedagogy, presidential rhetoric, and argumentation and advocacy. Holy smokes, I'm so excited to have you here. Welcome, Dr. Davis, the new president of Fairmont State University. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to have this conversation with you. Here. This is going to be good. So, yes, we had offline, we were talking about our previous conversation lasted several hours. So we'll see if we can beat that today. How many parts can this podcast go? Well, I'm excited. You've been in this position since what, July 1st? Was that your official start date? Okay, so just a few months. I always like to start this podcast just by asking guests to go through their leadership journey with us. So help us understand a little bit about your story and how you got to the point of where you are now, which is leading a university.
Yeah, and I sometimes I say I'm an accidental leader. Sometimes I say I'm a reluctant leader. It's funny to me because when I look at it, I keep saying, I can't believe I'm president of a university.
Very cool.
Right? And I think that, for me, it's always surprising. But then I talk to people who knew me when I was growing up, and they're like, oh, it makes total sense.
Really?
You were always organizing things. You were always making sure everybody was included. You're making sure everybody got invited. And I never thought about any of those kind of things. But every step of my career, I've been told by someone, oh, you should be a debate coach. You should think about being a university administrator. You should think about being a president. And it's never something where I said, I really want to be a university president. It was somebody else who said, hey, have you thought about this? The day I got my job as chief of staff, a colleague of mine in debate from another university said, well, I can't wait to see you as a university president. And I laughed it off. But I've always looked for ways to empower people. And I think I've been good at empowering people in my sort of small circle. And then I'm constantly looking for more opportunities to bring people in. And then I realize I reach a point where I don't have the ability anymore to affect change in the way I want to, or not as quickly as I want to. So part of the reason I wanted to become a university president was because I wanted to have the biggest influence on the biggest number of people. And I think a university president, you get to set the culture, you get to set the priorities, you get to make sure people are seen.
Yeah.
And that's really important to me.
That's amazing. I love that. And that's so cool about your story of how other people saw it in you. Because again, if I remember from your bio, you were are you first generation?
I'm first generation college student, yeah.
Okay, to go from first generation college student to president, well, first of all, multiple degrees along the way within higher education, but then also to get to that university president, I'm sure to your point, it's not like you were just sitting around as a child thinking, I want to be.
There's a lot of us, though.
president.
There's a lot of first generation college students who are presidents. It's one of the things I wish they asked. They do a presidential survey every year. And it's one of the things I wish they asked, because when you read these bios of new presidents, a lot of them are first generation college students. And I think they know how difficult it is to make it through college.
Yeah.
And they really want to make that difference. And I think about this all the time when I interact with people. For a long time, I didn't do it. And then I had some people sort of push me to say, when you see leadership in someone else, make sure you say it. Because I think that's what happened to me. Somebody else saw it in me and said it. So I make sure if I see somebody who I think is going to be the leader, I let them know. I think I say, these are the type of places I think you could end up. This is a great quality I think you have. Because I think too often we say, well, I'm going to put somebody in this position because they have that skill set, but we don't think about telling them to.
Yes. And a lot of times we put people in roles because of that technical expertise, not because of leadership skills that we see in them. But I'm so fascinated by this because I love the concept of telling people, when you say, I see leadership in somebody, what is it that you see? I'd love to hear some examples.
I think everybody's different. Everybody's different. And I think it takes everybody to make it work. Sometimes it's an interpersonal skill. Most of the time, it's people don't think they can do it, so they don't. They do the little piece that you ask them to do. And you say, well, what if you stretched that a little bit more? What if you took a leadership position in this? Because I think the biggest part of it is vision.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be willing to say, I see a world that could be a better place. When I interviewed at Fairmont State, I had a former intern in my office, Xavier Williams at JMU, who asked me before I came on my interview, he's like, what's the one thing you want them to know at the end of your interview? And it became my introduction for my public session. I said, the thing I want you to know is that you're worthy of greatness, and then I'm the person to help you get there. Right? And I think that that's the thing that we forget, is that people want to feel like they're making a difference, and too often we don't. And every single person on our campus makes a difference, but I think a lot of times they think, well, I do a 9-to-5 job and I go home. That doesn't matter to anybody, but it really matters. Yeah, well, and even students too. Like, I'm just a student, or I'm just a kid, or whatever. I'm just trying to survive today. What opportunities are there for me? Yeah, and it's those little pieces that make a big difference. This is a great story. So I was driving down to Charleston earlier this week, and I stopped at McDonald's for dinner, and I'm in the drive-through lane, and I'm wearing a Fairmont State shirt and my Fairmont State sunglasses, and the woman at the where I was paying said, all right, do you work at Fairmont State? And I said, yeah, I'm the president. And she said, oh my God. She's like, I just applied to Fairmont State. My mom is an alum. She's like, I want to go there more than anything. She's like, I'm going to cry meeting you. So my gosh. So I said, what's your name? She's like, my name's Lauren Bailey. She's like, I'm so excited. And she went screaming through the restaurant. So when I got up to get my food, I gave the woman who was working there, I had a Fairmont State lapel pin. I was like, please find Lauren Bailey and give this to her. That is so cool. Yeah. So I'm excited to welcome Lauren next fall. Yeah, shout out to Lauren Bailey. Yeah, but it was like, it's like that kind of, those little moments are really what's best about my job. We do lots of big things, but those little moments matter more than anything. Yeah, that matters more. Because I know, as a first generation college student who almost didn't make it through college, how much those little pieces of somebody saying, it's going to be okay. Yeah. I've got you. Yeah. How much those things matter. Someone just noticing you and just seeing you. Exactly. Yeah. That's so huge. Yeah. So let's talk about you transitioning into this organization, because I think it's so interesting. There's so many lessons that you can learn from someone coming into a leadership role, and you've got an already established institution with people who are already established in their roles. And there's been some turnover from a leadership perspective, right? Absolutely. So each person, I would imagine, has their own thoughts, feelings, and opinions about that. And so then you come in kind of cold. It's not like you were promoted from within. Right. You come in externally. Yeah, and I didn't bring anybody with me either. A lot of presidents bring a whole team of people with them, and I didn't do that either. Very interesting. Okay, I want to hear about that too.
But yeah, what's that transition been like? Do you have some examples about the approach that you've tried to take to assimilate, not even just to the institution, but I mean, you've moved your family to a new state, new town, and that's a big transition overall.
Yeah, and a lot of it is listening. I think that the mistake I think a lot of new presidents make is they come in and think they know exactly what they want to do from day one. Because I have a background in strategic planning, it's really nice to come in and tell people, we're going to slow down a little bit.
Nice.
We're going to slow down and make sure we get it right.
Yeah.
We're going to do some things quickly because they have to be fixed. But people already knew that. The people who were in leadership positions at the university already knew that. So it wasn't like they needed permission.
Right.
And I think people needed permission to be hopeful.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things the strategic plan does is it tells people, here's the process that we're going to listen to you and we're going to integrate your suggestions, and you're going to have an opportunity over the next year to dream about what Fairmont State can be.
That's so cool.
And then we're going to build out, it's not going to look like a lot of strategic plans. A lot of strategic plans are, we want to increase enrollment by 10%. We want to raise this much money. Ours are going to be big overarching goals, right? And because I think that those are the ways that you change the future of a university, and they'll have all those other small goals underneath them, but that's not the most important part, right?
Yeah.
Nobody ever says, what's great about your institution, say, well, our retention rate is 75%. That's not what anybody says, right?
No.
They talk about it being a great place to work, a great place to learn, an innovative place, all of those pieces that I think we'll see in our next strategic plan.
So you're kind of allowing people to do a little bit of dreaming then, and not just that's so refreshing though, because that's way more exciting. Not that you don't need the, we need to increase enrollment by X%, but you're right, that ladders up to a dream.
And my experience in rural communities has been that oftentimes they're not allowed to dream. It's, well, no, we can't do that tomorrow. We can't do that next year. Let's just do the same as we've done it before or slightly better, but we're not going to strive to be great.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, Fairmont State, City of Fairmont, Marion County, West Virginia, all have potential for greatness, but we have to believe it's true. That's the first step to getting there.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's a struggle for people to dream. So I've always asked people, what's your dream job? And if money wasn't an option, what would you love to do? Or if you hit the lottery tomorrow, how would you spend your time and your money? And there's a lot of people that will look at me and say, I hate those questions. I don't know the answer. Why do you ask me that?
I don't want to hear people hate those questions, because that's where we're going to start the strategic plan. We're going to ask people if money, time, and people were not barriers, what would you want Fairmont State to be?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Because we don't want to be a 20,000 person university, right? No matter how much money or time or people we had, we never want to be that, because it's not who we are. But we shouldn't put other things off the table just because we can't afford them right now, or we don't have the time or the people to execute them.
Yeah. So do you ever get resistance from people?
Every single day. Okay. Every single day. And it's all different types of resistance. Some people are resistant to change, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That you expect in any organization. Some people have been there for a long time and don't want anything to change. And then other people just don't want to risk anything. Right? They're so afraid of failure.
Yes.
Or they're so afraid of not getting what they wanted that it becomes self-defeating.
Yeah.
Right. And in my mind, I'd rather take 100 shots, even if 10 of them are going to hit, than never take those shots. I mean, no university that we look at, I read a lot of books about universities. If you read these books, you never see a university that's like, well, they played it safe and that worked out great for them. That's never the case, right? There's always some sort of innovation, right? We have to make smart bets, but we have to make some bets on our people. We've got some of the best people at our universities, but we're so afraid to bet on them, right? So instead, we keep everything close to the vest, and then we're stuck.
Yeah. And I think you're right. First of all, I'm fascinated by the fact that there are books about universities. I was not aware of this. Is it just how is this university so great?
Yeah.
Is that basically?
Some of them, how they've gotten to a certain place.
Interesting.
And I say all the time, I was like, I'm never going to write a book. But I think in my mind, if we wrote a book about Fairmont State and we looked back 20 years from now and said, where did we start? What was the story of Fairmont State? What would that be? And I think this first strategic plan is going to say, it's going to be the first 5 chapters of that book.
I was just going to say, it's a chapter.
It's going to lay it out.
That's super cool. I would imagine in this role, and in probably previous roles as well, you're going to come up against, especially from a resistance perspective, people saying, we've done that before and it didn't work. And I would love to hear, I feel like you probably have a good response for that. So I'd love to hear what that is.
So my joke response, but I believe it a little bit, is Spencer Flanagan, who runs the Falcon Center at Fairmont State, he likes to say, I'll try anything twice. Right. And I think that's part of it, too, is just because we tried it once doesn't mean it wasn't a good idea.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it won't work. Sometimes you got to try it 10 times to sell it to people. My wife works at JMU still, and she works in student engagement. And they had a bunch of events coming out of the pandemic where 5 to 10 students would show up.
Yeah.
And I always said 2 things about those events. One is it makes a huge difference to those 5 to 10 students.
Right.
But one of the things she found is she would ask students to talk about why they valued being part of the Honors College, and they would say, because there's so many events that are offered. So these are students who aren't even showing up for these events.
There. Yeah.
But that part of the community matters to them. So those are the kind of things I think we've got to talk about. We've got to try things. We got to keep trying them. We've got to innovate. And sometimes we're going to fail, but we can't let that failure define us. We have to say, what do we learn from this? When I was a debate coach, I was used to say to the debaters, don't make the same mistake twice. Right? We're going to make lots of mistakes, but let's learn from the mistakes and do something different next time.
Well, and I think it's always interesting when someone says, hey, we tried that before and it failed. Analyzing that. Okay, well, what were all the different parameters that were and the variables that were going into it at the time? What about it failed? Why do you think it failed? And are we in the exact same situation right now? Probably not. I mean, probably some of those variables have changed.
And part of it's how we talk about it. You know, Fairmont State is a suitcase campus, or students students go home on the weekends. Or students are only there.
Never heard that term.
Students are only there Monday through Thursday.
Okay.
And about a weekend, I said we're going to stop saying that. Because I kept hearing from students, well, I don't stay because there's nothing to do. And then I would talk to our staff and say, well, we don't offer anything because there's no students here. It's like, something's got to give here. So it's interesting, though, because the students said, we want to have a homecoming dance, which doesn't exist at most colleges. And then 150 students showed up and had a great time.
Did one?
And we did one. We did one last year, too, before I was there.
Okay.
But they did it again. 150 students showed up.
Very cool.
And it was great. And it was on a Saturday night.
That's awesome.
So the Saturday after our last football game, we do up all night every semester, and we usually do it on a Thursday night.
Okay.
And I said, what if we moved it to Saturday? Do it after the last football game. It's the weekend before everybody goes home for Thanksgiving, so there shouldn't be the same pull for them to go home.
Yeah, because they're
Let's
going.
offer them an amazing experience. And what I told the students, the first-year students, is if you show up for stuff, the secret is we'll keep offering it.
Yeah.
Right. So the more you show up, the more we're going to offer those things.
Yes.
So I would love it if we had something every night of the week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Because if we're attracting students or retaining students, we'll also be able to afford to have all those events.
Well, I was laughing. So I follow you on LinkedIn, which has been so cool. And there's other people that post about you. So I get to kind of not stalk you, but kind of be aware of what you're doing, you know. Yeah. And I saw you posted recently. You were at, I think, like 3 different sporting events in a week or something. There was a lot going on.
2 in one day.
Yeah. What is, I'm just curious because.
And there was a choir concert between those 2 sporting events. And I was in Ohio for the first one. So I drove back from Ohio.
These aren't just like in Fairmont.
No, I went to a choir concert and then went to volleyball afterwards.
Well,
soccer
I'm
afterwards.
Curious, like two-part question related to this. I'll start with the first one. But like, what is the day? I know there's not any typical day, but like, what is the day in the life of a university president? Because I'm just personally fascinated by that.
Yeah, my administrative assistant laughs because I don't have any downtime. She started putting office time on my calendar just so I can answer emails and work on some things like that. But I get my energy from other people.
Yeah.
I will never get tired in a room with other people. I just don't. It's how I've always been wired. So as long as there are other people around, I can go and go and go. My wife and daughter were back in Virginia for a lot of July. So I would do things all day and then go back to the house, and I was wiped out. And I'd never had that feeling before because usually I'm going back to a house.
Yeah,
I'm talking. So, but as long as there's stuff going on, I can always sort of get up for the next thing and be excited about it. But I think that means that my days are often really full. I usually have 12 hours worth of stuff scheduled, and usually there's an hour or 2 that I've got maybe some time at my computer, but not a lot.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of meetings and part of it is I'm new, right? Yeah. So a lot of people want to meet me, want to tell me what they're concerned about or what they're excited about. And I'm trying to create opportunities for them to do that. But a lot of that is one-on-one work. And I think that's new for people on campus, that the president is as engaged as they are, because people are surprised that I'm not available if they ask me 2 days in advance to do something. And that's a culture change. I think we'll have to institute that people are going to have to tell me things ahead of time, because people will call me and say, what are you doing tomorrow at 2? I was like, 3. I'm triple booked already. So whatever your thing is, I can't add it, and I feel bad. But
Yeah, but it's giving you good opportunities. I mean, it sounds like you're getting around to a lot of things. I know you are doing those open mic events.
Yep.
Great name. I love that.
My friend Eric Korn came up with the name. I got to give him credit. I told him I'm going to do open office hours in the community. He said, you got to call him open mic. So I want to give him all the credit for that name.
I love that. So. But tell us about open mic, because I think it seems, the concept seems really cool. But
most presidents do presidential listening tours. So they schedule, I'm going to go visit this group and this group and this group.
Okay.
And then at the end of the year, they end.
Yeah.
And that always bothered me. Because I was like, when do you stop listening? So after a year, you've heard everything.
I've heard enough.
Right, exactly. You've heard everything you need to hear. So I really wanted to create opportunities for people to come and tell me what they're excited about, what they're concerned about, and ask me any questions they might have. These early ones have been more questions than the other two, because I'm new, so people want to know what's going on. But I'm doing, hopefully, when I travel, sometimes it gets in the way, but I want to do 1 on campus, or 3 on campus each month, and then 1 in the community each month.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by the community piece, because I think as you talk about the different types of meetings that you're having, I mean, I think it's common sense that we'd be like, of course you're going to talk to groups on campus, but the community thing is interesting.
And we did one at the Joe
cool.
in downtown Fairmont. We did one at McAteer's right across from campus. And then we did one at the newly opened college lunch.
I haven't been to the college lunch.
We did a longer one there. It's a bar right down from campus.
Okay.
They have new owners. They've completely redone it. And that was a long one. I was there for 3 hours.
So can you share some? I'm sure you've got really interesting stories, but maybe some you can't share. But I'd love to hear some that you can, or just learnings that you've had.
I said, people early on said, what's the most surprising part about West Virginia? And I said, people tell you everything.
Right? You told me that, and it's so true.
Absolutely everything, right? So people show up and want to tell me their entire life story, who their parents were, and it's just really great to hear those stories. And it's interesting because when people say we've always been a suitcase campus, the people who show up for these events in the community know that's not true, and they tell me that's not true. But as businesses have closed in Fairmont, people don't stay at Fairmont State. So part of what I want to do is make sure that we're highlighting new businesses in the community. So part of the reason I'm going to do open mics out in the community is so people can go to those places and see them. That's why I wanted to do one at college lunch. It's the bar that's closest to campus, bar/restaurant that's closest to campus. So I wanted to make sure that people knew we were highlighting it and knew that it was going to be a resource for our students. One of the best ways to keep students in town on the weekends is to have things closer to campus.
That's super cool. And there are a lot of businesses, I feel like, that are opening up in the area.
Absolutely,
So that helps.
Yeah, we're going in the right direction.
But that's nice that you think about, it's a win-win from my perspective of how do I highlight and feature this new business, but also show people
And I say this all the time. We were at JMU for 17 years. If we were going to, I have a 12-year-old daughter. If we're going to uproot my daughter and my wife and our lives, we had lots of great friends there, and move somewhere, we're not moving somewhere just so I can be president of a university. Right? We want to be members of a community. Right? And that's why people, I told you this when we met before, people ask me all the time, how long are you staying? And I'm like, I don't even have my boxes unpacked yet. Can we slow down a little bit? But I also, I was talking to somebody who works for the chamber, and she was like, well, what happens when some new exciting opportunity comes around? I was like, is my work here going to be done? Because I think there's more than 20 years worth of work at Fairmont State in the city of Fairmont in Marion County. So if we get to the point where the university is thriving and is everything I want it to be, then we figure out how to engage a community that might not be everything we want it to be.
There's so much opportunity there. And you've got these dreams, and
there's
so
way
does
more
your
than 20. There's way more than 20 more years of work to do. So
good. He's locked in, everyone. That's awesome.
Nobody's gonna believe it till I've been here for a decade.
I know. Then they'll be like, the new guy. You'll still be the new guy for quite a while. So I have noticed that a lot of your professional career was centered around debate and communications, but also debate. And so we had debate at my school. I didn't do debate because I wasn't smart enough for debate. That was the smart
nobody's
kids.
Perfect.
Exactly. Those were like the real smart kids that did debate. But
You'd be surprised.
I was always really curious about it. So I just would love to hear, first of all, where the passion came from, because I'm assuming you're passionate about it or you wouldn't have done it for so long. So what was there for you?
So I was an accidental debater too.
Really?
I was not a very good college student.
Okay.
And my first semester I was okay. I barely made it through. And then my second semester, I had to sign up for, we had a large lecture communication class, and you had to sign up for a breakout session. And I either had to sign up for an 8 a.m. on Monday morning session or a 6 p.m. Tuesday evening session. As a bad student, you can probably guess which one I signed up for. But the session that session was taught by a graduate student who was the debate coach. So I walked in and they had an odd number of debaters, and the type of debate I did was a team activity.
Okay.
And she said, "What are you doing this weekend? Do you want to go to a debate tournament?" I was like, "Sure." And then I did debate for 25 years.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So
they hooked you.
Yep. I was hooked. I was terrible when I first started debating. My first semester, I think I won 9 out of 40 debates.
Okay.
So about 25%. But I knew there was a trick. I just had to figure out those tricks and I'd be okay. But it's interesting. I was a very successful debate coach. I won a lot of sort of national lifetime achievement awards sort of things. Cool. But I never focused on winning. My debaters will tell you this, that I always said process over product, right? We're going to focus on making, I would tell my coaches this at the beginning of every year. I would say, our why is we're supposed to make the students better people.
Yeah.
If we make them better people, they'll win plenty of debates.
Yeah.
But if they leave us and they're not more open-minded, more confident, better at doing research, something, if they're not a better person when they leave, we've failed. Because we can win. I could win plenty of debates. I could find ways to teach them how to win debates.
Yeah.
I want them to figure out how to win on their own and to feel good about what they were doing.
Yeah.
And that was the part that I really loved. That's the part I missed the most.
Yeah. Just
about
that
it.
coaching piece.
Yep. But I feel like one of the things I really like and why being a debate coach translates really well into the work I do now is I feel like I'm still their coach, right? I feel like I'm coaching a whole university now because it's not my job to be the expert on things. It's not my job to tell people what to do. It's my job to talk about them, about their goals and what they want to see for the university and help them get there. And the same thing with debate. We had some debaters who said, I want to be a nationally competitive debater. And there's some who say, I just want to get better at public speaking.
Yeah.
And then we would build systems to help them get to what they wanted their goals to be.
Absolutely.
And I think it's the same thing on a college campus.
Yeah. Well, and you're developing people. I love that because that's exactly what coaching is.
Yep.
And that to me is a lot of what leadership is too, is seeing people for who they uniquely are and identifying what is important to you and what do you care about and what do you want to get better at and then how can I help get you there.
Yeah, we should be really scared of leaders who think they have all the answers.
I know, but there's a lot of them out there.
But I don't think those people are leaders, but I think they're in leadership positions, but I don't think they're leaders.
Yes. Say it in the back. I love it. Yeah. All right. I'm also curious. Another thing about your background that I have to ask is about the gender studies and the work that you've done in that. That is really cool to me as well. So if you're willing to expand on what led you to go down that path.
Yeah. So when I went to my graduate program at Georgia, we had a lot of flexibility. If you came in with a master's degree, you had a lot of flexibility because there were certain classes you didn't have to take. So I started to think about, what I was interested in, what I didn't know about. I accidentally took a class. So I was newly married, so I wasn't like the other graduate students who were like out at night and things like that. We lived in a house out in the county, and I went to school, and I was teaching Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 8 a.m. Oh. So to keep some symmetry to my week, I was looking for a Tuesday, Thursday class to take outside of that. So I took a American Civil Rights class, and I didn't know much about American Civil Rights. I had done presidential rhetoric in my master's program. Okay. That's what I thought I was going to write about. And then I took this class that was focused mostly on women in the civil rights movement.
Wow.
And I learned so much in that class that I was hooked. So then I was like, well, how do I take more classes like that? And we had a Women in Gender Studies certificate. Cool. So I took those classes, and that's how I filled the rest of my schedule. And it changed that's my research area now. That's what I'm interested in when I teach classes about the American Civil Rights Movement. It's mostly about women and then organizations in the American Civil Rights Movement. Because you hear about Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, you hear about those folks. Yeah. If you don't hear about, there's an article that was in the New York Times called Unfamous Women. Ooh. And the article talks about all the women whose names you don't know in the civil rights movement, but they actually moved things along.
Wow. So I'd love to hear how that, coupled with your debate experience and history has shaped or influenced your leadership style? Because I feel like it would have to have an impact.
So when I teach an American Civil Rights Movement class, one of the things I try to show them is that history is not discrete moments, because I think that's how we see it. Right. So I have a dream speech. Rosa Parks sat down on a bus. Those kind of things. And I think it makes the world seem impossible to our students, because they say, I could never do that. I'm never going to be in a position to sit down on a bus, and I could never be that brave. I'm never going to be up at the podium like Martin Luther King is. And I say all the time, the Montgomery bus boycott doesn't happen unless there are women behind the scenes planning the taxis to take people to work, people staying up till 3 a.m. printing the flyers. All of those pieces are important. And that's the thing I always want to show people, is that every little act you do is what creates an organization, what creates change, which makes life important and worth living. Doing those little things right is really important. And I think that's one of the things we forget about. We all want to do big things. And we get very few opportunities in life to do really big things. Most of the changes we make in our lives, most of the impact we make is in the small things that we do, right? Handing Lauren Bailey a pin at the McDonald's, right, is a bigger change for both of us than any big program I try and institute that doesn't happen. And I feel like, first of all, you never know when something that you deem as a small thing is actually a big thing for somebody else. You know? Life preserver they need.
Absolutely. And you hear those stories all the time where, this was a pivotal moment in my life or a life-changing experience, and the person on the other side of it was like, I was just giving you a pin. Or, it's just like, that was a small thing.
You say, I see you.
Absolutely. But then the other thing that I think is important too is the fact that a lot of times there's such a building and an accumulation of those little things. So there's so much, when you dive into these people, famous or not famous, but you start peeling back all the things that led to that, to your point. It wasn't like they just came on the scene one day. I mean, there's years and years and years of work and failure
I've obviously, because I went through an interview process to become a president, and I've started to think more about how I ended up where I did. I've thought a lot about how those things stacked up. But before that, I think I just kind of went. And I think I told myself this story like, well, I worked really hard. And I got where I got because I worked really hard. But there's lots of people who work really hard who didn't make it. Right? Who don't have what they want. I mean, so a lot of it is luck and support, and you build in these pieces. And I think that's the really important part that we often don't see. I have a really good friend and mentor, Brian Charette, back at JMU, and he asks the best questions. He's one of those people who would ask you a question and you'd be like, oh, I had never thought about it that way. Right?
Love good questions.
And sometimes it was things just like, what's your guilty pleasure movie you watch over and over again, and what does that say about you? But he asked me.
What does he do? This is I love the questions. What's his role in the?
Well, see, he was our director of strategic planning. He retired right before I left. Which I'm glad I left, because I don't know how I could have done it without him. But he would always ask those kind of questions, like those really probing questions too, like. Who do you trust if you're making a decision? Why did you end up where you are? He asked the same kind of questions you're asking now, and I had never thought about them before. I just sort of had done my job, and then I did the next job. But I think asking those kind of things are really important, because that helps you figure out as a leader what kind of person you want to be. So who empowered you, who made you feel like you mattered, and how do you embody that?
Exactly, because I do feel like a lot of it is just an accumulation or a collection of our experiences over time, leaders that we've been exposed to that we liked, didn't like, said, I'm going to do that someday when I'm a leader, or I'm definitely not doing that when I become a leader. To me, you can talk about differences between management, leadership. I mean, from my perspective, when you are truly leading, a lot of that, you've already gone past the fundamentals of management. So to me, it's more about when you are truly leading, I feel like there's no perfect textbook definition for what that is, because oftentimes it becomes very stylistic to the person. So I would love to hear your thoughts and perspective on your own unique definition of leadership and maybe how you feel you show up as a leader.
And I think it also often doesn't live in position, right?
Yes.
So I think about, I talk about people who are mentors to me, and most of them are not people who were above me on the organizational chart. Most of them are actually people who, if you had a traditional organizational chart, would have been below me on the organizational chart, or were students, or were other people who I learned a lot from.
Yeah.
And I think that, when I talk to people about leadership, I said, the number one thing is showing up.
Yes.
Right? You can't get things done unless you're there for people.
Yeah.
Unless you truly are willing to put them first. One of the things I said it all the time as a debate coach, and I said in my very first meeting with faculty and staff at Fairmont State is, if you really want to lead, then the successes of the people you work with have to be just as important to you as your own successes. Right? You have to celebrate them just as much or more, and you have to be sad when they don't work out for people more so than for yourself. Because the truth is, you can control a lot about how you react to certain things.
Yes.
But other people need you to be there for them. And then the goal is they're there for you.
Yeah.
And I think a real leader knows people are going to be there for them and vice versa.
Yes.
And I think that if you can't get that, you're doomed from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? Then you're just in a leadership position, but you're not really a leader.
Right. And I feel like we have a lot of that. I always think those little statements are interesting about, they basically say, would people follow you if they didn't have to?
Yeah.
If organizationally, hierarchically, whatever, if they had the choice, would they still choose to follow you or not voluntarily?
Yeah. I had a conversation a couple weeks ago at a football game with somebody who's leading a program on campus, and they said to me, well, why do you care about this? It wasn't my background. It's not something I have any skill in or any interest in pursuing on my own. And they said, why do you care about this? And I said, because you care about it and because our students care about it. Now, to me, that's a response of somebody who's never been told their work is important by anybody who wasn't right next to them doing that work.
Yes.
And to me, that's really sad, because if our students are excited about something and our faculty and staff are excited about something, I've got to be excited about that.
Right.
And I've got to be excited about that because they are, and because it matters to them, and because it's how they find their people. It's their lifeline to a better future. And I think we've all spent time doing activities that no one cared about. I mean, I was a debate coach for 25 years, right? Where debate is one of the most underfunded activities in higher education.
Really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
That's
absolutely,
interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there's 400 football teams in the country, and there's 100 debate teams.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, in my mind, that should be, I love football, but that should be flipped, right? Every university should have a debate team.
Yeah.
Right? Teaches critical thinking skills,
Well,
public
that's why
speaking.
I went. That's interesting, because I think you learn really great skills out of that you can apply to other things in life. Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
No, universities don't have debate teams should be shamed. We're one of them right now, but we're going to fix that.
Are you going to start one?
Yeah, we'll start.
Very cool.
Yeah, I'm reaching out to some of our alums next week to see if we can.
That's awesome.
Get that going.
That's really cool. Yeah. Sorry, I took us off track with that, but I was just like, that really surprises me.
But being in an activity that was under supported, and then we had a president at JMU who loved debate. So he showed up at our meetings. We were in every one of his president's reports. He always made sure that he reached out to myself and to the students to tell them their work mattered, and it changed everything.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's always going to stick with me, that if I show up to a choir performance or I show up to an art opening, just being there, even though it's not my passion, I'm passionate about the people who are doing the work, and that's what matters.
Well, and that's huge, because everybody looks to see. We just all have that tendency to compare who gets the attention, even in a corporate setting. It's what meetings does this leader cancel versus always attend? Where do I fall on the agenda? I always would joke around, because the work that I did in HR was more of the developmental, that I always call it the fun part of HR.
Right.
But in the firefighting mode, that is often the HR department, it often was the lowest priority on an agenda, because it was like, we've got this very pressing employee relations issue we have to deal with, so we're going to listen to those people talk during the staff meeting, and then it's like, if there's time, we'll talk about learning and development. And I mean, I didn't make a fuss about it, but it's not like I didn't notice that they'd be like, all right, we have 5 minutes left in our meeting. Laura, did you want to say anything? And it's like,
it's part of the reason why talent development doesn't belong in HR.
Ooh, say more about that.
Talent development should be its own goal at a university and should be part of everything we do.
I like that.
Right. One of the things we're really investing in at Fairmont State is making sure everybody on our campus has an opportunity for professional development.
That's awesome.
And I don't care what job you have. I think we do a really good job of making sure, faculty members, we're building out systems to make sure faculty have support.
Yeah.
But every single staff member on our campus should have some opportunity for, even if it's small things, even if you're a maintenance worker and you want to develop some financial literacy, we should have a program.
Yeah.
And we do have a program where you can develop your financial literacy on campus.
Amazing.
And I think those are the kind of things, if you invest in your people, they'll invest back in you. Right? I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. I mean,
it is true.
I hear all the time, well, people leave Fairmont State or people left Jamie or people leave things because this job paid more. I just don't think it's true. I mean, I think that people don't leave jobs because of money. Now, we should pay people as much as we can.
Yeah.
Right. We should be eventually be the highest paid employees at regional publics in West Virginia. But in the interim, while we're trying to figure out how to make that work, we can find all sorts of ways to support people so that they feel so connected to us that they only leave if it's an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I can tell you for a fact that coming from a recruitment background, that was always a question I would ask in an interview is, well, why are you leaving? Why are you interested in leaving wherever you are right now to come here? Because usually people were already employed. And so they were having to make that choice like you. Why, why are you coming here? And 9 times out of 10, it was lack of opportunity and development. It wasn't because I know, and the company paid well, but it wasn't, I know I'm going to make a lot of money here or whatever.
And I want, if somebody leaves for a really good opportunity, I also want them to go to a really good place.
Yes.
And I think one of the things we have to model for our employees and for our students is what's a great place to work look like? So then when you apply for another job, so it might be a big promotion, right? You might be, a director and you're applying for a vice president's job and it's a great promotion. But I want you to look at that place and say, am I going to feel as supported there as I do here? Yes. And if the answer is no, you should stay. You should stay where you are.
Yeah.
Right. Until you find that place. Because otherwise you're going to be looking for a new job way faster.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. And I feel like the research shows, and I look at this a lot because I care about it, that direct managers account for 70% of the variance in someone's engagement level. So that's huge. I mean, that's a lot of pressure, I feel like, or I would hope leaders feel that it's a good pressure, but there's pressure there of, hey, 70%, and it doesn't mean that I never had anyone leave my team, but I would take it to heart because I thought, there's obviously probably more that I could have done for that person and been a better leader for them. But recognizing that impact, it's not, and we've heard it, people leave people, not companies or organizations. So, but I love that you're even telling students that too, to be thinking about what your opportunities look like.
I had a Twitter fight with somebody during the pandemic.
Did you?
I posted a thing that was like, we should be more forgiving for students who are missing assignments. We should give them a little bit of grace. I think what I actually posted was, if you take off 50% off an assignment because it's 6 hours late, you're no longer testing competence. You're testing ability to follow one simple instruction. Yeah. Because I understand there can be a punishment for turning in something late, but 50% is a lot.
50% is a lot.
And somebody said to me, I want them to learn how the real world is, da-da-da-da. And I said, I want them to learn that they should find an employer who, if their work is 6 hours late but fantastic, gives them credit and grace because they understand lots of stuff's going on in lives. Right? I mean, yes, if you're a doctor, you've got an immediate thing you have to do in that moment. Yeah. But most of our jobs, a 6 day variance won't matter most of the time. Yes. Especially if somebody's doing exceptional work. Right. I'd rather have great work 6 days late than have mediocre work on time.
Ooh.
When not most faculty, but a lot of faculty treat the on-time work as if that's the most important part. Right? And I don't know why that's the case. And so that's the fight I had. But they said, what, I'm trying to teach them a lesson about the real world. And I was like, so am I. Yeah. I'm trying to teach them that if they should have a boss that if something's happening in their lives and other people can help them out, they help each other out, right? We're all part of a team. And that's where I want my students to work. I don't want them to work at a place where it just sees them as output input.
Yeah. Oh, that's so huge. And I think oftentimes too, getting to the bottom of why that's late, that assignment or whatever
Right.
is late, right?
Yeah.
Is there something going on in their life, or are they just disrespectful to the timeline? And those are two different things. And a lot of times there's something going on. There's a reason, and they're not just intentionally flaking out. And do you feel comfortable talking to your boss about that, or are you terrified?
Yeah, I saw a tweet the other day from a faculty member who said a student showed up at my class after her sister died. Ooh. And she said, I just didn't know where else to go. Aww. So I had to go somewhere I didn't know where else to go. And the faculty member said, I'm going to treat every student as if they're in that situation now.
Yeah.
Because you never know. You never know what people are going through.
Yeah.
Right. And we have to be more compassionate. I think part of the way we ended up where we are politically in this country and interpersonally in this country is we've forgotten there's somebody else on the other side of the table.
Absolutely. And we all have our stuff, and we all have
our
stories.
We all have our own unique trauma that we've dealt with and we're always dealing with.
Exactly. And so much of conflict is not about you. It's usually about something going on inside that person, right? But you're right. I feel like we've really lost that ability to empathize and show compassion to other people.
Yeah, people ask me all the time, do you get mad? And I was like, I get mad almost every day. Right? Almost every day I'm mad about something. I'm mad about something. And they're like, but you never yell or anything. I was like, I yell sometimes. Yeah. I was like, but I don't yell if I don't think it's going to help. Mm-hmm. We had a situation when I was the debate coach where our hotel reservations got messed up, and everybody's did. It was something that happened with the hotel that everybody was double booked. Yeah. And when I got there and we finally got things worked out and I got our hotel room keys, the woman behind the desk said, thank you so much for not yelling at me, because everybody had yelled at her that week. Mm-hmm. And I said, would yelling at you have gotten me more hotel rooms? And she's like, no, it probably would have gotten you fewer hotel rooms. And I said, right. I was like, if I thought yelling at you would have helped, I would have yelled. But I didn't think that was going to help in that moment. So I think that's part of it is there's certain people who think they have to always appear strong to be a leader. Yeah. And I actually think it makes more sense if we can be a little softer.
Yes.
And then when we have to be strong, it means a lot more.
Absolutely, because people notice that because you start to tune it out after a while. Yeah. If that's someone's approach, first of all, you're not going to endear yourself to building a strong relationship with someone. So they're going to give you the minimum that they have to give you, and then till they can get out, right, and find that organization or that environment that's more supportive.
And I think some people love those leaders at first. They say, oh, that person's a really strong leader. I want to be like that. Mm-hmm. And then the longer they interact with them, the more they say, I don't like this. I don't like the way this makes me feel. Mm-hmm. It's not who I want to be. Yeah. But I think we need more examples of people who lead from empathy, lead with some softness, and give people a landing place and give people some space.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, I mean, I'm all about trying to challenge people appropriately. I think sometimes we're unrealistic with how far we push people, but challenging them appropriately based on what we know they are capable of and all of that.
But we set the bar. I do think we set the bar too low sometimes.
Yes.
And I had this conversation with our students. We did opening convocation for all the first year students. And I said to them, you're going to be challenged in ways you've never been challenged before. Mm-hmm. And part of the reason we're going to do that is because there's a whole world out there that tells me you can't do it. Yeah. Right? If you read about, students of this generation, they just want to be at home. They want to sit on their phones. I was like, I told them I don't buy it. Yeah. I don't buy it. And I don't care what people who aren't investing in their future think about them. Absolutely. I said, so we're going to work you harder than you've ever worked before, but we're also going to support you in ways you've never been supported before. And I think that's the really important part. We should expect a lot from people. Yes. We should work hard, but we should also feel like we have every tool we can possibly need to be successful. Yeah, so that they're in that type of an environment where they can bring their full potential and they can do what they're capable of doing. Right. And sometimes they don't see it in themselves, and you have to kind of help them out a little bit, which is why I loved what you shared earlier about how people planted seeds within you and said, hey, this is what I see in you, because you're right. There's often times where someone just taps you on the shoulder and you're like, I never would have thought about that, or I don't see that in myself, and how huge that is for people. Yeah, one of the things I really enjoyed that I got to do at JMU was I helped build some of our task forces. So we had a task force on inclusion and a task force on racial equity, and we populated those with people from the campus and broader community. And what I tried to really do was make sure it wasn't all the same people who always get tapped for those opportunities. But I tried to find people who I thought were future leaders and find ways to make sure that they were included and that they were looped in. And we had an intentional program at JMU called Impact that Brian, who I talked about earlier, helped to run. And what they did was they took people who are at the director level or in that area who were potential future leaders, and they put them together for a whole year. asked them to examine university problems and come up with a solution. And then they had training sessions where you went around the university and around the community to learn about what different people were doing.
Very cool.
And we're going to bring something like that to Fairmont State because I think it's really important that you say to somebody, I see that you're a leader. Even if you don't see it, I see that you're a leader, and I'm going to put you in a room with other leaders.
Yes.
So now you have those connections. You see what other people do at work. You see that there's leaders. Every time you turn around, there's a leader there next to you.
And you're learning from each other, which, I mean, that is so huge to pair some of that more formal training and development, but also just learning from each other and each other's
experiences. Well, it means the faculty figure out what the finance people do, and the finance people figure out what the faculty do. And then we all appreciate each other's expertise a little bit more.
And it, I think, really helps with decision making. I mean, the more aware you are, the more you have exposure to different parts.
Builds trust.
Absolutely. And you're less likely to maybe throw someone under the bus or be like, how dare he or she say this, or, you know.
I hear all the time, every college campus I've ever been on, people say, well, they don't understand how X works. And I said, well, that's our fault then. Right? If we think they need to understand to be able to make the decision, they don't understand, that's on us. Right? That's a failure of communication.
Absolutely.
A failure of how we share information. I think we're all bad at it. We all want everybody to understand, and we send one email and we think that covers it, but we know that's not true.
That doesn't.
They'd have to actually read
Or
it.
we think it. I think a lot of times I'm like, I thought that. Did I say that? I don't know. It was in my head.
Yeah,
it should be clear, right?
But people will say, you don't have all the information. And I said, well, that's not their fault. They don't have all the information. Where would they have found it?
Yeah,
and now there's some people are just stubborn. Some people don't want to have all the information, but it's nice if I can say we gave you all the information and you ignored it, as opposed to, oh, you just don't know some things.
Yeah. If I polled people that work with you, how do you think they would describe your leadership style?
I don't know. I just told you this before we interviewed. I don't like talking about myself.
I know. You know the goal of this is to talk about you. Or what would you hope they would say about you?
That's how I was going to answer it.
We can do that.
I hope they feel supported. I hope they feel like that I respect their expertise. I think every single person on our campus has a level of expertise. I hate the term unskilled labor. I don't think there's anything such thing as an unskilled job. Right? If you've ever, when in college I made cheesesteaks at the dining hall, and I think I was really good at it.
Nice.
Right? And to me, I thought it was a skill.
That's a skill.
Right? And I think that we often forget that, and we forget that the things we think are unskilled labor are actually the things our students often see the most. Right? Does a garden bed on campus look great? That's not unskilled labor. That's an art.
That is.
Right? And I hope that people who work near me and interact with me often know that I appreciate what they do as a skill and as a talent. Yeah, for sure. I keep thinking too about, as your students transition and ultimately graduate, I'm sure you get to do like commencement addresses and all that, but like what advice do you typically give, or what is your hope for them as they're launching into their next chapter of life? I hope that one of the things they take with them from college is that learning is amazing, and that they should keep doing it. That they don't walk out the door and they say, well, I'm done. Now I'm going to go do my career. But that they'll remain curious. I think you should strive to be happy.
Yes.
I think too often we do jobs or make decisions because we feel like that's what we're supposed to do. And I've always tried to live a life guided by happiness. I think it's how I've ended up where I am.
Absolutely.
And that's why people ask me if I ever get mad, because I think I'm generally a joyful person. But I think that's really important. I think if you're not doing, I always say, if you're not enjoying your job more days than you don't, you should go find another job.
Yes.
Right? You should find something else that makes you happy.
Yes.
And like, I don't think anybody likes their job every single day, right? There's lots of days where you'd want to stay in bed a little bit longer.
For sure.
But if you hate your job most of the time, more than 50% of the time, you should go find something else.
Absolutely.
Because there's lots of jobs out there that'll make you happy. You just have to figure out what that is.
And there's a good chance you're just not in the right fit for you, or whatever, not a supportive environment, whatever the case may be. But I think a lot of times people sit back and they're angry that they hate their job and they want someone else to make it right.
The other advice I always give students is, don't say I want to do X as a career. Instead, figure out the things you like about the jobs you've had, and then find positions that have that, right? So, I mean, I ended up as a chief of staff because of that. I liked community engagement. I liked working with people from all across campus. And I liked making connections with people and then getting out of the way.
Yeah.
So saying, you two have a lot in common. You two should talk. If you need support, let me know, but I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
So that's why I became a chief of staff. Now I'm doing that in a supercharged way as a president. But that's what I looked for.
But those are the things that you enjoy doing.
Nobody grows up saying, I want to be a chief of staff. I want to be a university president. Those are not dreams that little kids have. But I think I ended up there because I knew what I loved about being a debate coach and being a faculty member. As chief of staff, I found out more of what I loved, and it became obvious to me through some people pushing me in that direction that being a university president was the right choice.
Yeah, and I'm sure at some point you decided, I like being in this environment. I like academia, or I like higher education, or whatever the case may be. And I think a lot of times I'll work with people. It's so fascinating to me how people end up in there. I love career stories. I love career stories because there's so many people that will end up, they'll say, well, I'll say, how did you get to where you are right now? And they'll be like, well, I started as an intern, or like I did this job because there was no other job. And then fast forward, and it's like 20, 25 years later, they're still basically in the same career, industry, whatever. But some of them wake up one day very unhappy, and they're like, I don't even know what I'm doing, who I am, why I'm doing this. And so what I love to do is peeling it back and like, okay, well then I have a lot of people that come to me and say, I don't know what I want to do next, but I know it's not this. And can you help me figure out what next is? Which I love, because it's like the dreaming,
That's
right?
a lot of fun,
Love those conversations. So I was like, okay, let's like peel it back, start from scratch. And sometimes it's even, I ask questions about, what did you enjoy doing as a child? Because sometimes people get so lost that they don't even remember, they don't even know what they like to do as an adult. Like, what do you do for fun? I don't know. I don't have fun. I don't really do, I don't have a life. So it's like, okay, what'd you do for fun when you were a kid? What are the activities that you were drawn to when you had, summers off? How'd you spend your days,
Yeah. I like to ask people, what was the best moment you had last week, last month, last year, whatever it is.
Very cool.
Because I'm like, that's the feeling you want to bottle. And that's the feeling you want to replicate every day. Yeah.
Oh, share yours. Will you do it on the fly? What was your best? We can do it. Well, maybe this week.
Well, that Lauren Bailey story was a pretty good one. That was a pretty good moment.
Yeah.
But, I think there's a lot of people who come to me who even maybe just worked for me for a year, who still come to me for advice, and they're like, how do I navigate this? How do I navigate that? I think part of the reason they come to me is I don't sugarcoat it. I'm really honest. I was like, that sounds like a terrible situation.
Love it.
Right? But I think that's part of it, right? It's the difference between sympathy and empathy, right?
Yes.
Say, I've been in a terrible situation before too.
Yes.
Here's how you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Here's what you need to do tomorrow to make it through this. And those are the really bright spots in my day, is when somebody leaves that and says, okay, I feel a little bit better about this.
Yeah.
Right? Honestly, if they leave and feel like their problem is solved, I probably have not been honest with them.
Right.
But if they leave and they're like, I feel a little bit better about this, then that's okay. And I have lots of people who come to my office now who want me to solve big overarching problems. And I tell them, we have a strategic planning process. We're working on this. We'll get there. I'm going to be here for 15 to 20 years. So you got to trust me that we're going to get there, and we got to be patient together.
Yes.
And I hope they leave those meetings feeling a little bit better.
Yeah, because I think, first of all, you're acknowledging. So I think a lot of times people just get very dismissed, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally. Yeah. But it's just like, your opinion's not valued or valid. We're not really listening. But like the fact that you're just like, I hear you, I see you. Yeah. It's on the plan. Can't happen overnight. I mean, you're honest. I wish I could wave a magic wand, maybe, but can't solve everything overnight. Yeah. But I'm on it.
Yeah. So I'll give you another example from Tuesday of a great day. So Nick Fantasia, who's the president of our Alumni Association board, came to me and said, I'd like to do something for the students. So Nick and I cooked hot dogs for an hour.
Oh my gosh.
On Tuesday.
That's
out on the quad. I had a chef's hat and an apron and everything. Awesome. I'll send you the picture.
Yeah. We'll use that when we promote this podcast.
There you go. I'll send it to you. So we did. We served 300 hot dogs in an hour.
That's awesome.
And the number of students who I knew who came up and talked to me. I mean, at JMU, there's 22,000 students. Yeah. So I knew a handful. I knew students who I'd had in class or that sort of thing, but there were very few students I knew. I knew more students of the, 3,000 we have at Fairmont State than I did of the 22,000 we had at JMU. And they would walk by. And then other students came up and introduced themselves because they hadn't met me yet. And one girl said to me, she's like, President Davis, I haven't met you yet. It's really nice to meet you. And then she was walking me. She goes, I just want you to know you're awesome.
Aww,
and I was like, oh, that's so nice.
Cool.
Right. I was like, that's so sweet. Right. That she felt like moved to say that too. You know, I was like, that means that student's going to stay at Fairmont State and graduate. Guarantee it. I guarantee that student is because they feel that connection.
Yeah.
And are willing to say that connection out loud, right? They're willing to speak that out loud. Once you start speaking out loud, why you love a place, what you love about it, what hopes you have for it. You don't have to love everything about it, but what hopes you have for it, you're staying.
Yeah, because you're invested in it.
Absolutely.
Wow, that is so cool. How many students do you have?
About 3,200.
3,200. That's nice. I like that. That's a good. Do you have, this is a very tactical question, but do you have tips on how to remember people's names? Because I do feel
I'm terrible at it.
Really?
I'm absolutely.
I don't know. I feel like you're good.
I am absolutely terrible at it. My wife will tell you I'm terrible at it. No, I'm absolutely.
You like whispering.
I say, hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy.
There he is. Hi, friend. All the time. Yeah.
Hey, student.
Yeah. My wife is much better at it than I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah. No, I mean, I try really hard. The students are the hardest. Because I meet them sort of in passing and fleeting.
Well, and it's tough because they know you. Like they just have to remember your name.
Everyone knows my name.
Yes, but you're trying to remember, 3,000 people's names.
Or we'll have 3 employees who are the same height, same hair color.
Yeah.
We had 2 who are the only time I've done this so far, because usually I try not to say something specific to people because I don't want to mess it up.
Yeah.
The only time I did it is we have two employees who both worked in student success, who both had the same first name, and I got their jobs mixed up because they're the same height, same hair color, and I got their jobs mixed up. And I said, and it was the first week of school. And I was like, hey, how is this thing going that you were doing? She's like, that's not me. And she was very nice about it.
She's probably used to getting mixed up with the
she's
other
like,
one.
there's 2 of us.
Yeah.
We're our offices are near each other. We get that a lot.
I used to have a colleague. We had the same initials, and her name is Lauren, and I'm Laura, but to other people, that's like an interchangeable name, right? And we kind of looked alike, but she was a lot prettier and smarter. And so I always loved it when people would mix me up with her, because I was like, not the right one, but like, I'll gladly be mixed up with her anytime.
That's awesome.
I'll take it. All right. Well, I know you're locked in. I know that you're staying for a long time, 15, 20 years, thankfully. And I know you just started, but I know you want to make an impact, and I always love to ask the legacy question. So if you hit the fast forward button, and it doesn't even have to be at the end, it can just be at the end of this year, at the end of the end of the semester, whatever. But what type of legacy do you hope
we should be the number one choice for faculty, staff, and students of public universities in West Virginia.
Ooh, I like that.
We've already got the facilities. We've already got great faculty and staff. We need to build up some programs. We need to help build the community around Fairmont State. But I think we can do that. And I think we can do that in the next 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
I look at that. So my background in strategic planning means I know how the national rankings work.
Yeah.
And we're much lower than we should be in the national rankings. When I look at how we compare to other
What
publics,
drives that? I don't know.
So when I look at
world.
so I use West Liberty as an example because I think we're very similar institutions, resource-wise, student-wise, that sort of thing. They're significantly higher us in the national rankings. It's all reputation. They have a TV. They have a TV station, which helps a lot. That was a brilliant move by them to have a TV station. But we're very similar institutions. Our students, even who are choosing between us, know we're similar institutions. But they do a good job promoting who they are and talking about who they are. Their marketing team is really good. Ours is really good, but we need more resources behind it. And we need to think more strategically about what makes us unique. And then we need to build programs that no one else has. I keep saying this because everybody's cutting around us.
Yes.
No one ever cuts their way to prosperity.
Say it again.
So when people say, "Oh, you brought back music and art," and I said, "Yeah, it's not going to be the last programs you see us bring back or start up, because there are AI-proof jobs out there that we can build programs around. That in 10 years, people are going to look back and say, why is Fairmont State the only institution in the state that has this program? And it's because we were willing to take that chance when everybody else said you got to cut.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Now,
you can only cut so far.
And that becomes your solution to everything.
Yes.
Now, there'll be some reorganization. I think we have classes where there's 5 or 6 students in a class.
Yeah.
And we should ask the question, how do we cross-list that class with another major?
Right.
How do we tweak that class to attract other students? How do we make things more flexible? And I think that's one of the mistakes universities have made is they've been too rigid, right? So we think you have to have sociology, anthropology, philosophy, all in separate departments. But in actuality, those disciplines are already having conversations with each other.
Right.
So what if we made this really interesting and innovative interdisciplinary program where faculty members get to explore and teach what they want, get to figure out some new classes, and we can build stuff around that. Coming from a communication studies background, we're by nature interdisciplinary.
Yes.
So I would teach a class that would be defined as a political science class, when there was a history class, and when there was a communication class, all in the same semester, sometimes the same class.
Right.
Right. And I actually taught a media and politics class that had political science students, journalism students, and communication studies students all in the same class. And I was like, that's what we need more of in higher ed.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of saying, well, I teach what I teach, and that's all I ever want to teach. That's not that. I mean, I know some of our faculty will not like me hearing me say that, but ones who are like, I want to teach something new for the first time and explore it. So my last 5 years at JMU, I taught exclusively for the honors.
Right. Is that the right way to say it? But yeah, the most published, we'll say that. But it was people that really were passionate about what they were teaching. And I knew they were knowledgeable usually because of how it came across through that passion.
And the trick is to rewrite the curriculum, but privileging faculty expertise, right? It comes back again to expertise. I think it's not one that's written by a board or by some university administrator, but I think it's instead going to the faculty and saying, if you were designing something from scratch, in an ideal world, what would it look like? Because I think one of the things that happens is, and I think you see universities doing this too, I'm trying not to bash other universities, but I guess it's happening.
You're not naming any of them.
I think one of the things universities do is they say, well, here's what the market wants, or here's what our students want, so I'm going to build that.
Gotcha.
Right? But like Steve Jobs at Apple says, he never asked anybody what product they wanted.
Yeah.
Because they can only see what's right in front of them.
Well, exactly.
It's our job. We're the experts in higher education, right?
Yeah.
Our faculty and staff are the experts in higher education. We're going to build programs that in 5 years, our students are going to be attracted to. And that's our job to sell them.
Yeah.
Right? Because if industry comes to us and says, we need more of X, by the time we build that program, they don't need that
Well, I was
anymore.
just going to say that. Yeah, that's not a quick process to suddenly build out this whole new program.
It takes 5 years to build out a full program.
So, you're too late already, especially with technology.
Yeah.
What do you see as being on the horizon for the future in terms of like maybe not as in demand right now, but
people jobs. Yeah, I'm in a new president's group, and the president from Southern New Hampshire University, which is interesting because they're,
they do a lot of advertising.
They spend more than our budget probably on advertising every year. But 90% of their classes are online.
Yes.
And he said to us, everybody's like leaning into computer science and that sort of things. He's like, those are not AI-proof jobs. He's like, he thinks in the next 50 years, one of the things you're going to see is it's going to get back to privileging jobs that only people can do, right? Teachers, nurses, social workers, those sort of things. Hospitality.
Human element
I think
jobs.
hospitality is a big one for our state.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me. I don't think there's any hospitality programs in the state right now.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
Some of them went away with the cuts and things like that.
Interesting.
But it's the number 3 industry in West Virginia. So why aren't we training our students to be ready for that?
Well, absolutely.
And it's because nobody's asking for it.
Yeah.
So we're not doing it.
Yeah.
Right. But what if we built it and then sold it? right? And we went to people who are working in the hospitality industry now that don't have degrees and said, let's find you a path to get a degree so you can be a manager or you can run your own business as opposed to working on a ski slope for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, I know many people in the industry, and ultimately they felt like they had to leave just because it's like, well, you can't do this for your life, and this isn't a career. I was a camp counselor. Man, if I could figure out how to do that the rest of my life and pay the bills, that was the best job ever.
Absolutely.
Best job ever.
So I think we need adult summer camps.
Yes.
It's one of the things I've thought about doing.
Can I lead an adult summer camp? That would be so much fun.
I would like to do them at Fairmont State.
Yes.
Right. Well, they have like fantasy baseball camps and stuff like that you pay tens of thousands of dollars to go to Florida and do that. But what if you could do adult basketball camp at Fairmont State for a week?
Can I play softball again?
Yeah.
I would be so happy if someone did like.
Yeah, and our campus is mostly empty in the summer, so we've got empty dorm. You come live in the dorm.
Oh my gosh!
How much fun would that be?
I am in on that. Well, I'll tell you something very interesting. Do you know Dan Pink? He's an author.
I don't.
Really interesting guy. But he's written a lot of books on different topics. But his most recent book was on regret, and he did a global regret survey, which sounds really depressing, but it was fascinating. And he asked adults mostly, but like he did the whole, I mean, you can see the breakdown in the data. It was like very specific, but he asked people all around the world about what their number one regret in life was, all those things. And one of the biggest regrets people have is not doing a study abroad program when they were in college. So I feel like that's a bigger.
Alumni study abroad. Yep.
Alumni study abroad. Like having
at JMU, we have a lifelong learning institute, which is mostly retired folks, and they do study abroad trips.
Very cool. But that's one of the number one regrets, which I think is really interesting. Like I wish I had taken that opportunity when I had it. Because you think about...
I've got 2/3 of an alumni trip to Rwanda already built. So...
Okay, I need to take a class so I can become an alum.
There you go. You can come along anyway.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. I'll help in some way. I'll make it worth the group's while. That is so cool. I'm all about this camp idea.
Yeah.
I'm in on that. We're going to
We need to play more.
Yeah.
Right. I say this probably every day. I said we do really serious work at a university.
Yes.
Really important and really serious work.
Yeah.
So when we play, we really have to enjoy the play parts.
Absolutely. Well,
right?
and I'd say
when you go to an athletic event,
adults.
when you go to a choir performance, when you cook hot dogs on the quad, you've got to be all in on those good experiences too, because the really serious stuff is all consuming already.
Absolutely.
Right? When we're solving really big problems and we're figuring out how to retain students, how to address student mental health, we're already all in on those.
Yeah.
But I think when we play, we're often 20% in because the 80% of the serious stuff is weighing on us. And I think we've got to find ways to give people permission to be joyful and to say, I'm going to lose myself in this moment and I'm not going to think twice about it.
No, and to offset some of the heavy, because there's a lot of heavy.
Yeah.
And I think people do get stuck in that. I mean, what I was talking about earlier when I was sharing how people just kind of end up in this career and they're like, I don't know what I do. A lot of times it's sad to me to ask the question of what do you do for fun?
Right.
And I've had points in my life where I've not been able to answer that. I used to say sleep, and then I was like, that's really actually not fun. That's survival,
right.
And I need a better answer than that. But truly, I think there's a lot of adults out there that don't have an answer for what do I do for fun.
The joyful moments remind you why the hard stuff is worth it. So we had a bonfire at homecoming, and it was an amazing experience because there's a group of students in a circle near the DJ having a dance battle. And I looked at that and I said, every one of those students that we worked hard to get here, and that we work hard to retain, and we work hard to give this opportunity to, every one of those students who experiences that moment, that's why we do all the hard stuff.
Exactly.
Right? That's why we struggle with figuring out the scholarship model. That's why we figure out how to provide enough mental health support for our students so that when they're out in that environment, they can just be in the moment and be joyful and have fun. And I think we need to create more moments like that and then truly enjoy them when we have them.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. This has been just wonderful.
Good.
What if anything I haven't asked you that you were hoping to cover?
People always ask that
today?
question. I think I've got to have a better answer.
Have a better answer.
People ask me
every
single time I do an interview. People are like, "Is there anything else you want to say?" And I'm always like,
And then you feel like it's the end of like a job interview where you're supposed to ask.
I thought you were the expert. I thought you were supposed to have all the questions.
I know, that is awkward.
If I have to come with answers and questions, one of us isn't doing our job.
Told you I wasn't very good at this job. I tried to warn you. No, this has been wonderful, though. That's appreciate it. Now, I will ask if you're game for the lightning round.
Of course.
Because that's speaking of fun and play,
Yep.
I like to end on a fun note because I do like to have fun. So this is 60 seconds to answer as many open-ended questions about you.
Okay.
So hopefully you know the answers. All right, on your mark, get set, go. What season best fits your personality? Spring. What's your most used emoji in text?
Probably the winky face.
All right. What book, song, movie, or podcast has had the greatest impact on your life?
Oh my God.
That's a heavy one.
That is a heavy one. Yeah. So I'm going to say a book that most people haven't read. It's a book I read probably 5 years ago called How Life Imitates the World Series.
Ooh, I want to read that. Okay. What's something about you that surprises people when they first hear it?
That I don't like public speaking.
Fascinating. Fill in the blank. I spend too much money on...
Books.
It's a wise investment. What celebrity would you want to play you in a movie?
Oh, that's so funny. Kevin James. I don't know.
Oh, that's a good one. I like him. If you wrote a book, what would the title be?
Here for the Joy.
Here for
I don't
the
know.
Joy.
We're talking a lot about joy.
I love it. That's a good. Oh, that's my Moana timer that just went off there. I love it. My son said that for me. All right, you got through a good many.
Yeah.
It's not really a competition per se. Maybe
Did I
should.
win though?
Definitely won. Yes.
Good.
Yeah. I'm always like.
I'm a competitive person.
Well, I make it competitive, and then I'm like, what? I mean, there's really no
Yeah.
prize or anything. Maybe I could do at the end.
It was
of this
hard. The
year.
hardest part of that was not explaining.
I
why.
know.
That's
Well,
the hardest part because I'm an explainer. So
Same, and I like want to talk about the answers too. So
Right.
I have to catch myself because I want to be like, say more about that.
Right.
Then I run the timer out. All right. Thank you so much for
Of course.
being here
It was my
today,
pleasure.
for having this conversation.
Anytime.
And I look forward to having you back. I think definitely
sounds good.
we
Yeah.
need to have
Make it a
that.
regular series.
A regular. Yeah.
Yeah.
That could be a part of the camp, the
Yeah.
study abroad.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
You could check in with me every fall and be like, so we talked about this last time. How's it going?
Yeah. I'll come to you during finals week and
Yeah.
just random points like, how's it going now? I love it.
Finals week for administrators are actually some of
That's
the
true.
easiest times. This is the time right around midterms is when everybody's a little more stressed out and on edge, and we have to be a little more careful as administrators to make sure we treat people with
Good.
softness.
We'll check in next fall then. If
Awesome.
not sooner. All right. Thank you. Of
course.
That's all the time we have today. Thanks for joining Leadership Rediscovered. Until next time, shine bright, everyone.